Spare some change? I'm a teacher in Florida. I need all help I could get. This is the No Frills Teacher Podcast. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 12 of No Frills Teacher Podcast, where 50 is Nifty. I'm your host, Joe Camps, and tonight's episode is sponsored by No Frills Teaching LLC. Yes, I'm serious. I'm sponsoring my own podcast with my own education consulting company because I need a side gig. Because when I'm not doing instructional coaching and consulting, I moonlight as an underpaid teacher in the state of Florida. Now, typically when you're doing a podcast, you cue up the laugh track like, ha, 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 and it's a good setup. Sadly, that's not the case. This is factual. And in fact, when I talk about the way pay is going in the state of Florida, that 50 definitely is not nifty. In fact, it's outright pathetic. We need to do better. We need to pay teachers better. Teachers are severely underpaid. We should not have to rely on second and third jobs to get by and support our families. We should have a livable wage. And the reason why the episode title is 50 is nifty, it's obviously sarcastic because a recent report that was published by the NEA shows that Florida had dropped from 48th to 50th in average teacher pay across the nation. There's only one state that has lower average teacher pay, and that's West Virginia. We're talking all 50 states and the District of Columbia, and Florida is now ranked 50th. Florida, with its booming economy, with all the people that are moving down to this state, all of the wonderful things that are happening that have made Florida a desirable place to live or to relocate. Teachers are continuously undervalued, overlooked, and grossly underpaid. So let's talk numbers. According to the report from the NEA, Florida's average teacher salary is $53,098. And that is behind only West Virginia, where the average pay is $52,870. Last year, Florida was ranked number 48 in the nation. And once again, this year is now ranked 50th. So what's the average salary across the nation? Well, according to the NEA report, the annual teacher salary had increased 4.1%, reaching 69,544. So nationwide, annual teacher salary is 69,544. I'll say that again, $69,544. Florida's annual salary, 53,098. So we're talking quite a big gap between a national average and the state average in Florida. Wow. Well, I mean, we all can't live in California or Massachusetts where they're paying a ridiculous amount to their teachers. So some people might be saying, well, come on, the cost of living is so much more higher in those states. And you guys got it good in Florida, right? cost of living is cheaper. You're right. That was probably true 20, 25 years ago. I remember as a kid always growing up thinking and believing that things were a lot cheaper in Florida. Cost of living was a lot cheaper. So it was always justified. Well, you make less when you live in Florida. You make less when you work in Florida because, well, the cost of living was much cheaper in Florida. However, due to inflation and due to the booming economy, and especially with the housing market in the state of Florida, Florida has now caught up or surpassed most states in our nation. So we can no longer use that argument that, well, the cost of living in Florida is much cheaper. So really, when you think about it, it's pretty equitable, comparable to these higher cost of living areas across the nation and what those teachers are getting paid. I call BS on that because if you have visited Florida recently, you should know, or you will know if you can do come down here, that the cost of living is out of control. Inflation is out of control. Yet salaries for education professionals are not comparable and they're not keeping up with the cost of living increases that we are facing day in and day out. Teacher pay in Florida is so low that it's actually below Florida's minimum living wage of $58,970, which is defined as the income needed for a family of one adult and one child to have a modest but adequate standard of living in the most affordable metro area, according to the NEA. So, how is all this affecting the profession and the exodus of teachers leaving the teaching profession in the state of Florida? Well, according to the same report from the NEA, as of January of 2024, there were more than 7,500 advertised vacancies for teachers and educational support staff. And once again, this was reported by the FEA, the Florida Education Association, which was then shared through the NEA article and is also shared on Newsweek and other outlets that, once again, 7,500 advertised vacancies. We're in a teacher shortage. We're in a crisis, really, what we are. And I understand that that's a national thing. We're in a national crisis. There's this mass exodus of teachers throughout the nation for many reasons. Pay is usually the number one reason. And then there are other factors as well that drive in and help kind of factor into, if you will, why teachers are leaving the profession in droves. Think about that. 7,500 vacancies for teachers and educational support staff. And it all stems from the absurdly low pay that educators receive in the state. So you might be listening to this episode and be thinking to yourself, well, if it's that awful, why don't you just leave Florida and go teach elsewhere? And that's a great question. To be honest with you, personally, for me, I'm too invested in the state of Florida as far as with my career. I'm finishing up my 19th year and I already invested with my pension through the Florida retirement system. The amount of time I've put in, it's just I can't say it's necessarily worth leaving. So it's kind of like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because I understand that I might be coming across as almost complaining, like, wow, woe is me. It's so low my pay and this and that. And there, however, when you have invested 19 years into your career and you've invested into your pension, like I have throughout my career, and like my wife has with her career as an educator also here in the state, I have to think about if I leave and I go and teach elsewhere, unless I see a significant, I mean, significant increase in salary where it's worth leaving the state, I'm starting to go over. Now, maybe I could pull what I have. I won't get my full pension when I retire from the state of Florida. And then perhaps I could start up a new pension elsewhere and get vested elsewhere or have a Roth opened or 403B and all those great, wonderful things. But there are many educators like myself who feel almost stuck I suppose I could always go look for a job outside of the public education sector and go and work for the private sector and stay within the education field. And that's always an option. And that might be something that I will end up doing in the future. Or like I've started on my own consulting, because it opens up opportunities and creates these new opportunities to work beyond my local school district and have these opportunities to work with teachers and district leaders across the entire state and perhaps one day beyond the state of Florida. However, many teachers do feel stuck, that they've invested so much time, or they only have a few more years remaining before they retire, and it's just not worth starting over or relocating to a new state. Not to say that it can't be done. And I know other friends of mine who have left the state of Florida and are very happy teaching elsewhere, and they make a much higher salary than I make here, as a teacher in Florida. My wife makes as well. But once again, that comes down to a personal decision. So yes, it might sound like I am saying it's for woe is me. However, really, the point of this episode is to bring to light and make others aware of what really is happening with the pay for the teachers in this state, and to raise awareness, really. And I understand that there are other states that are similar to us with very low teacher pay and poor working conditions and too much put on teachers' plates and too much political influence, when we should be able to just go in and do our jobs and be trusted as the professionals that we are. Uh, It is something, however, to think about, where why is this happening, and what do we do as a profession, and what do we do as a nation to improve the situation? Because we need to attract and retain the next generation of educators. And if you were to look at the College of Education at most universities, it's not as desirable to go into this profession anymore, because these students that are graduating from college, they realize that this is not sustainable. Becoming a teacher is not sustainable in this day and age, and especially in this economy. And I think they're wisening up. And that also leads to the crisis, this shortage we have in our profession. So what can we do to attract? Now, yes, there are improvements with raising the starting salary for a teacher. And when you're coming out of college and you're 20 something years old, and you're looking at, well, they went from 44,000 to say 48,000 as starting salary. Yeah, that's appealing when you're 21 years old, 22 years old. But when you're 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're making slightly more than that, not so much, especially when you have a family. And if you don't have a family, it's just not sustainable. So we need to do better. We need to do better to attract teachers to the profession. And more importantly, we need to do better to retain veteran teachers in this profession, so that they can help support the next crop of teachers coming up. So how did the state respond to this report from the NEA? Well, according to Newsweek, they reached out to department spokesperson Nathalia Medina, who works for the Florida Department of Education. And quote, she said, when Governor DeSantis signs Florida's budget for the upcoming fiscal year, the state will have invested over $4 billion in paid raises for teachers since the governor took office. This was accomplished despite constant obstruction from organizations like the FEA. As a result, Florida has increased our teacher starting salary from 40,000 to 48,000. She goes on to even say that the NEA's report is bogus, quote, saying it does not consider a variety of factors such as cost of living and state income tax. She added also, quote, we also have no way to verify that the union is accurately collecting and reporting teacher salaries and not artificially inflating the data with benefits and other forms of compensation, end quote. So she does bring up a good point about increasing the starting teacher salary, but really the whole point of this episode is talking about the report from the NEA about annual teacher salary, average annual teacher salary, and where the state of Florida ranks according to the NEA report. So once again, kudos to making it more appealing because once again, we do need to attract those new teachers to the profession. That starting teacher salary going up to 48,000, and the money that has been invested in the state of Florida to attract these new teachers. But what happens when you are no longer a new teacher, and you are now a 5-year veteran or a 10-year veteran, or like myself, a 19-year veteran, where this is not sustainable? It's great at the beginning, but how do you improve it so that you can keep people around long term? It appears that the FEA has a plan. Well, according to the FEA's plan, they have called on lawmakers to increase funding by 2.5 billion a year for the next 7 years to address inadequate pay, to hire more mental health specialists, and to address the academic needs of students. Will that happen? Well, it really depends on our legislators, and it depends on the budget that they're working with or the budget that's approved. And then it trickles down to local school districts and then any collective bargaining that those districts have with any local unions or associations. And it's not as simple as just saying, yes, we could do this. And it sounds great in theory, but the reality of lawmakers approving 2.5 billion a year for the next 7 years to address inadequate pay, although that'd be fantastic, highly unlikely that that will happen. Here's a suggestion. How about we look at our district officials and people that are getting paid 100,000 more than the average teacher, and we start reevaluating why there are people that are not in the classroom or have not been in the classroom for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, making six figures, when teachers who are in the trenches day in and day out and supporting students are the ones who are getting a fraction of that as far as salaries go. Perhaps we need to reevaluate how money's being spent with higher ups and trickle down and start cutting some positions that are unnecessary so there's more money available within the budget to better pay teachers locally. Unless one day I'm a district official, then we'll leave the salaries the way they are because I want to make that kind of money too. I'm tired of making nothing. In the meantime, however, I suppose I'll just have to keep hustling and working in that second job and doing contract work and consultant work. And my wife's going to have to continue selling rodent fields because we need to support our family. And my friends and colleagues out there that are tutoring, working at restaurants, waiting tables, doing aftercare programs and morning programs at school. I need a little thing to get by. Keep doing what you're doing because that's what we do as teachers, right? We work hard, we hustle, we see things through, we have grit, we are determined, and we are wonderful, and we make a difference. And we don't see that difference in our paychecks. We don't see that difference when the mortgages do. However, we make a difference in the lives of children. And I know it's cliche. You can't put a price tag on that. So keep hustling, keep working hard, keep pushing, and keep doing what you do. Like this episode, check out others on Podbean. Look for the No Frills Teacher Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Looking for some professional development? Check out www.nofrillsteaching.com, where I have webinars that are live and pre-recorded on increasing reading comprehension, using ChatGPT to create formative assessments, and how to use Kami in the classroom for fun collaborative work with your students. Like some swag? Check out my gear on Redbubble, also on www.nofrillsteaching.com. Let the world know that you are a No Frills teacher, both inside and outside of the classroom. See, I was serious. I got to really push my side gig because I'm a poorly paid educator. I got bills to pay. What can I say? Lastly, looking for some professional development to take over the summer, make sure to check out the Educator Summit and my session, No Frills 321 Reading Strategy. My session will be like nothing you have seen before, as it will completely immerse you in the future of professional development facilitation. Whether you're a teacher or an administrator, there's something for everyone. Visit www.theeducatorsummit.com on how to register. You can also get in service points for your school or your district. Make sure to sign up using promo code No Frills Teaching, all one word when you sign up, to get the best deal possible for a summer full of virtual PD at your fingertips from the top presenters and keynote speakers across the nation. See you at the summit. That's it for tonight's episode. Season 2, episode 12. The 50 is nifty, although we really know it's not, and now we know why. I'm your host, Joe Camps, aka the No Frills Teacher, and this is the No Frills Teacher Podcast. Have a great night.